Into Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. Breaking news. President Trump today introduced $1 trillion in new spending on 5G infrastructure and the like. And if you thought the situation was bad now, just wait until $1 trillion worth of death towers hits our city streets. If you were confused about the situation in the past, you better get unconfused right now. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the video guy doing on vacation? Obviously. Now today we're going to be taking in calls like yesterday. The instructions on how to do that are pinned in the comments of this video. If you're watching this on replay on demand, feel free to send an invite through the Hangouts network. You're already logged in thanks to the Google mass surveillance. They track you everywhere. And that's part of the plan. We've got exceptional news to cover today. Things are just spiraling out of control thanks to this Wuhan supervirus and the, let's just say, social engineering. They're definitely trying to spark a race war. They started with the Jussie Smollett case, which blew up, imploded. We saw the George Floyd case, but now there's all sorts of lynchings happening, being reported across the nation, adding fuel to the fire, no doubt, as well as the Atlanta case. We'll be getting into all of that and taking your calls. Again, the instructions on how to get on the phone with Ron Johnson. You can find that in the comments. Don't know what the video guy is doing, featuring this trusty tri-field meter. And we wanted to point out something. You know, people often complain about the meters jumping. And it's because the radiation coming out of these death towers is pulsed radiation. Now, in one of the broadcasts, we featured this news report that was displaying a $20,000 meter. And if you pay attention to the numbers on this $20,000 meter, the numbers are jumping as well. That's the very nature of the physics, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't have yourself a meter, you're getting dosed much more than you have to. And you should definitely know what's in your environment, in your schools, at your gas station, at your grocery store, at your shopping mall, at your place of work, in your house. You should know. You deserve to know. The people around you deserve to know what they're getting dosed with. And if you don't have a meter out there, you're just flying blind. Now, we recommend the EMF 390. You can see that on our website or on our Facebook page, STFN Reloaded. Sure to check that out. You'll be glad you did. Shop around. You'll be back, ladies and gentlemen. It truly is the best one for the money and blows away the competition. And just imagine $1 trillion worth of death towers coming your way. You know, it might not be exactly 1 trillion, but they've just earmarked a $1 trillion infrastructure package that focuses on 5G. So even if it's only 100 million or 100 billion, that's still going to be a lot of death towers. It's about $1 million a death tower. So you can just imagine what we'll be looking at. We're broadcasting live on the ScrewTube. I want to give a big shout out to everybody in the audience. KD, Hugh, Granny, Jake, Lisa, Drenger, Tammy White, Endgame, many others. Any case, we'll be taking your live calls here pretty soon through the Google Hangouts. You can find the instructions how to do that pinned in the comments. But you know, here we go. Here we go with some news. Adrenochrome coming at you. There's a reason why they're grooming children, why they're sexualizing children. It brings them down a dark path that enables them to basically get snatched and the like, and eventually they get processed for adrenochrome according to reports. So, be on the lookout for these cult members. You can tell them by their fruits. Now, it looks like things are spiraling out of control in other countries, and this is because this virus is cut with rabies. We've talked about this, and the evidence here is overwhelming that this is some kind of super virus that originated in a lab. And from various scientific reports, we're being able to see that it's cut not only with rabies but HIV. That means no immunity, perpetual reinfection, and every time you get infected, it attacks your brain. This is very well known with coronaviruses. It attacks the brain, causing brain damage, among other things. And there's all sorts of reports now about COVID and dementia, COVID hallucinations, COVID attacking the brain, and it's because it's cut with rabies, the rage. Now we're getting reports in Beijing that things are starting to turn towards the severe once again, and we're actually seeing mass roundups and camps and the like. And so that's coming. It's part of the New World Order agenda. Now we got 5G death towers set on fire in the UK. New reports, more death towers coming down out there in New Zealand. They are just basically blowing it apart. And 3 more death towers are, have come down in Auckland. These are new, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out. Check out this propaganda from Wireless Estimator, a facilitator of the eugenics programs, liable for countless deaths. Cops collar the nation's first cell tower terrorist, they say, accused of setting fire to 2 California sites. Now, if people are concerned about their health, they are now terrorists. And you see, quote-unquote activists basically raping and pillaging cities like Seattle, and those people are classified as heroes. The mayor of Seattle is now facilitating new concrete road blocks for the encampment. We've got that news story. But, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist. And, if you are not on board with the libtard agenda, you're definitely a terrorist and a racist. And that gives them all the excuse they need to terrorize you and to exterminate you with their goon squads and other official programs. Welcome to the slavocracy. We've got some urban guerrilla warfare. Oh, look at this. This was a decent video. It was gone, but there's all sorts of things going on right now. Army deployed in Dijon like the mustard because of this. Now, in these European countries, they're not allowed to buy guns at a gun store for the most part. Certainly not automatic rifles and the like. Everything, requires a license. And here we see basically some kind of, mini civil war erupt between 2 ethnic groups, Chechens and North Africans. And it was like literally an open war in broad daylight. And this is part of the rabies function, ladies and gentlemen, because as people get reinfected, they become more and more like a ticking time bomb. And essentially, the whole world is going to get plunged into this zombie apocalypse. And it's going to look somewhat normal. It's going to look somewhat real in the sense that it's, just gang warfare or civil unrest. But there's certainly more going on. Trump preparing $1 trillion infrastructure spending package to stimulate the economy. roads, bridges, broadband, and 5G. Now, of course, fiber optics is the prerequisite for 5G. You know, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, most people were celebrating the fact that fiber optics were coming into their neighborhoods. They're like, whoa, gigabit speeds, bitches. And then all of a sudden they realized what those fiber optics were really for. To get piped into the many, death towers that are showing up on everybody's street. And so when you see rural broadband, that's basically laying the train tracks for the death towers. And essentially, they've turned our cities into giant concentration camps. Instead of gassing you, they're irradiating you and infecting you with their virus. Now, this may seem like the same old song and dance, but I want people to be able to essentially regurgitate that on demand. These people are out to get you. You need to know the talking points, and you need to raise awareness in your community, to say the least. Who's ready to call in? Is there anybody out there? Are we still live? Have they banned this broadcast? They love banning broadcasts. They love burning books. I know a lot of people out there are really kind of like still sleeping when it comes to this administration. But if they were so on your side, they would have locked up Hillary long ago. You saw the headlines today, Trump to lock up Bolton for, releasing secrets. So they can lock people up if they want to. And look at poor, little Julian Assange, locked up for what? Exposing the New World Order. Look what happened to Seth Rich. Look what happened to Breitbart, Michael Hastings, the dude from Gray State. Look what happened to Epstein, right? That's essentially the new American justice, right? You expose the system definitely goes after you. And in fact, a little known secret here is that was the true motive for, getting rid of General Michael Flynn. If you remember, he outed Obama as ISIS, another war criminal, another genocide. And, that was the whole reason for Benghazi. They were funneling guns through Libya into Syria for this proxy war with the Russians. And that was the whole idea of ISIS, to draw in the Russians over there. And among other things, there's a couple, agendas there. But in any case, genocide. And it's been genocide after genocide since 9/11. And we just sit by and just, accept it. And now it's come home to roost. Now we've got the genocide, coming are happening in America, as well as, the military surplus weapons that are being delivered to the police to enforce the crackdown, the lockdown, and the suspension of your rights. Who is Bill Gates? People got to check out this documentary. And out there in New York, they're basically fusing shut public parks for kids. I wouldn't really call that a park. It's like a concrete slab with a slide on it and a death tower right nearby. But look, they don't even want people going to the public parks in New York. They want people to stay at home. No fresh air, no freedom, right? Just breathe in the virus, breathe in the chlorine and the bleach as you're power cleaning at home. Breathe in the disinfectants, the gels that you put on your hands. All of those are volatile organic compounds that accelerate the respiratory disease side of this outbreak. It's not just that these people have been 2 steps behind. They've been giving you the worst kind of information when it comes to staying safe. Criminal doesn't describe what these people have done. And they were even bold enough to foreshadow this epidemic, not only in speeches like this one, where Fauci's like, oh yeah, Trump's going to go through a surprise outbreak. But we're seeing, in fact, references to coronavirus in movies We're seeing the same type of predictive programming as we did for 9/11. You know, they basically signed their name to this virus a million different ways. And the question now is, you know, what are they waiting for? What's the FBI waiting for? What's the Department of Justice waiting for? And look, you know, precedent, history will tell you that you can't count on, you know, the FBI. You can't count on the Department of Justice. They're not there to protect and serve you. They're there to protect and serve the interests of this New World Order, deep state, whatever you want to call it, election despotism. I mean, it's this little group of people that you get to choose from, but they're all pre-selected. They're all part of the same bloodline, same fraternity. It's a rigged system. And that's why there needs to be a boogaloo. And look, even if, you know, the story or the war doesn't end on July 4th, 2020, it'll certainly take on a new phase after the election. Because if Biden wins, finally all of the conservatives will, you know, leave their homes, hopefully, and make their way towards Washington, D.C. No matter who wins the next election, it's just going to be, you know, an outrage. Let's finish the news and get to your calls. If you want to call in, check out the instructions in the comments. You go to hangouts.google.com, you hit contacts, you add ron.johnson701 at gmail.com. You're already logged in as a YouTuber, screwtuber, if you will. So if you got into the invites yesterday or today, feel free to message us, and the first come, first serve. We'll get you in right now, bitches, pretty much. And if not, let me know in the comments here, in the chat on the live stream, and we'll try and call you. That's how good our customer service is over here at STFN. Don't call us, we'll call you. You know what I mean? How's everybody doing out there? Jan B, Christopher, Amy Lynn, Hugh, Big Toe. Are you serious? Are you serious out there? Chickens and turkeys, he says. Gobble, gobble, bitches. Who else is out there? Afisha Haynes, how you doing? Do we get everybody? Patrick? Huh? Who's calling in first? Hello, JJ. Hello. What's the email? It's ron.johnson701 at gmail.com. DJK, what's going on? Call into the show, bro. The instructions are right there in the comments. And if you're not technical enough to make it on the show, that's too bad. Maybe next time. What else do we got? Who's ready? Who's ready to come on the show right now? Jesus Kingdom Power, are you ready? Are you ready? I'm going to try and call you. Why not? You tell me what's going on. Here we go. First call of the show. And I'm not sure if it's actually going to go through, to be quite honest with you. Hold on. We're experiencing technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. But as we buy time, please bear with us. Who else is in the audience that wants to come on? Mr. Barrister, you want to come on? Eden, you want to come on? The Garden of Eden, thinking about the Garden of Eden. We're all like Adam and Eve tending to the garden. That's our responsibility. That's the natural world. Adam and Eve. It's not Adam and Steve. That's a perversion. That's wickedness. That promotes confusion. How many of you know your Old Testament? How many of you know the books of Moses? You should. Then you'd realize how perverted our society has become. And we've tolerated way too much, ladies and gentlemen. Who else? Anybody want to come on? Anybody want to come on the show? Go to your hangouts.google.com app or website right now. I guess we'll just continue on with the news until somebody gets to it. But now that the Democrats have complete control of the country, you're all fucking racist. Pardon the language out there, ladies and gentlemen. That's what happens when you see... Oh, somebody's calling me. Who is it? Okay. Peter is first come, first serve on the show.
Who is it?
Peter, are you there?
Peter is
Hi, Ron.
How's it going?
Yeah, very good, very good.
On the show.
Now it sounds like we can hear the echo of the show in the background. If you could just...
turned off.
Yes,
turned off the speaker.
Perfect. So where are you from, Peter? Tell us.
I'm from London, and I just want to thank you for telling us actually what we're facing. No one else seems to tell us. So yeah, airborne HIV, SARS, rabies. Now we know what's coming. No one else seemed to tell us. No one else seemed to tell us the sort of medication you might want to take that's on a herbal basis. No one else seemed to be able to tell us to get ready. So I just want to thank you for that and for keeping us informed.
Well, I think that was, the least anybody could do, given the situation. And, I thought it was rather strange that they didn't provide anything that might have been helpful. It was so obvious, in fact, that they were not trying to be helpful when it came to this outbreak.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you know so much about it, but you seem to be very, very well informed. And the place to get the information. And I think your commentary about how it's spreading around the world is absolutely right. Enjoy the show. And I think things in the UK are a little bit different to the United States. I think here we have a much greater affinity for our leadership. It's almost like watching a soap opera about what's happening in the United States from a safe distance. But we'll watch and wish you well.
Well, look, I appreciate the thought there, and I think that unfortunately in the UK people are just almost too civilized for their own good, and it's kind of like not wanting to offend anyone, and you just get rolled in the dough in the process. And sometimes you really do have to stand your ground. But look, I think that perhaps there's something else going on with the UK. I don't want to be mean, but
I think the difference over here is our leader Boris. He's had it, okay, and those he's had the virus, and so he has a sense of compassion. I think there's a lot more compassion over here, and a lot of mutual respect when we have like daily briefings, and I think although they don't tell us the right thing, they're still we're only beginning to wear face masks on public transport. Otherwise that's not necessary. You look at other different countries in the world, you look at Vietnam, where there's absolutely no virus left there at all, and all they did was close their primary schools on day one, and everybody wore face masks. I mean, everybody remembers having SARS over there, so for them it was a matter of routine. And now they have a situation, no fatalities and no cases in the country.
Well, supposedly. And I think that is really the key word in a lot of what we hear on the television. I mean, I think it's okay to be a skeptic, and just because they announce something on television, I usually think it's the opposite of what they're saying for the most part, except maybe the weather, look, it's hard to say. I think people have varying opinions as far as what the actual situation on the ground is. And I think it's real easy for the majority of people to dismiss this outbreak for the time being because, most people are asymptomatic. And,
I think that's right.
And
no one over here had any idea what you were talking about when you were. I think back in January, you're telling everybody was asymptomatic. No one here had any idea.
Well, it just made sense in terms of the logic of a bioweapon. I mean, you'd want it to be stealthy. You'd want it to not show up on the tests. You'd want it, to infect everyone before the damage really, was noticed. But
the curious thing is, I think even our leadership here, even Boris, who went on the TV and just said, "Just wash your hands. That's enough." I mean, the next day he called the virus. So I think even he was not aware.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, eventually
he wasn't properly briefed.
Eventually they blamed the scientists for the miscommunications, you could say, or the misunderstandings. But I'll be honest with you, I did my undergraduate as a biologist.
That explains a lot.
My major was biology, and I can tell you as a bachelor in biology. Given what we saw, there was legitimate reason to be concerned. I mean, we saw people running around in spacesuits. We saw them, locking people in their buildings. We saw the crematoriums on full blast, and all of this information was really open sourced. I mean, we didn't call anybody in China. I didn't deploy any, reporters or secret agents out there. Everything came in, through Twitter, basically. And it was just a matter of just, putting it together and go, look, I mean, it looks really, really bad out there. And
I think it was terrible over there.
Oh, yeah. And you just couldn't imagine a scientist looking at, any of that and saying to themselves, just wash your hands. And to me, omitting, the facts there shows malicious intent. We really just kind of ran with it because, again, from a scientist's point of view, there's just no way you could look at that and just be like, oh, well, that's no big deal.
But do you remember watching the TV? And so there were two guys from the WHO, and the head guy was saying, it's okay, you can get on an aeroplane and it's not going to affect anything. And the guy next door, who had been involved in cracking down on Ebola, he was squirming in his seat. He didn't agree with a word what was being said by his chief. And so his time came and he said, well, whatever you do, you just have to do it quickly. But there was clearly they knew within WHO that in telling people it's okay to travel and it's not going to affect anything, they knew. It was absolutely, you don't need to be a genius to have seen that on the TV. It was quite clear. So yeah, I think what you're, I think it's your channel is a very, very good place to go for information.
Well, look, we just call it the way we see it.
Common sense. You need to know what you need to know to survive.
Well, I think people, need to know what's going on given the gravity of the situation. And it truly is like a mass extermination program that's underway. And this is just one vector of delivery. This is just one way that they're, effectuating their plans. But essentially what we're discovering is that, just about every consumer product is laced with their poisons. And not only that, but so is, the technology and the like. And look, I appreciate you calling in, Peter. And, we'll get you in again the next time. We're going to try and get a few other folks in.
And right, good information. Thank you very much indeed.
I appreciate the call, Peter. Very good caller. And we wish you well out there in the UK. Definitely.
Take care. Thanks, Ron.
Until the next time.
And, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. And look, I think a lot of people, want to believe the television, no matter where they're at. They just can't imagine how, sinister this system is. And yet, when you look back at, stand-up routines like George Carlin and the like, I don't think anybody would, argue with what he was saying for the most part. I think everybody realizes that it's a big club and we're not in it, and we're just basically, a nuisance to the elite out there. And I think you can kind of empathize with that. You probably said to yourself at one time or another, there's too many people. right? But you know, look, this program that's happening right now is very real. We want to get some other callers in, and anybody else want to call in, just give me a jingle right here. If you haven't, you know, if you haven't called in already, let's see if anybody new wants to call in. I'm sure there's a few people that already came on that want to come back, and you'll be back, just probably not today. However, who's out there? Anybody want to call in? Let us know in the chat or on the Google Hangouts. Instructions to call in are in the comments. I want to give a big shout out to everybody out there in the audience. See a couple new faces and the like. We'll get into some of the news. Still got some news to cover. More Disney World employees arrested for pedophilia. And I think most people remember the documentaries on the sex symbolism embedded in Disney cartoons, the phallic symbols and the like. And there's no excuse for that. You can't tell me that's okay. You can't tell me, you know, that sexualizing 4-year-olds and preschoolers and elementary school kids is okay. That's not okay. But of course, if you talk about it, you're a racist, you're a bigot. And, you know, if you do videos about it, you know, they'll pull it down, they'll burn your books. And they don't want people talking about it. You know, they talk about discrimination. But I think conservatives and Trump supporters are discriminated against much more in the workplace than, you know, LGBTP or, you know, any of those other groups. And so I think, you know, it's about time that conservatives, patriots, Christians out there mobilize and have, you know, their rights respected. And, you know, it's long overdue, in fact. And if we don't watch out, you know, they're basically going to, you know, wipe everybody out. Las Vegas police officer shot during protests, paralyzed from the neck down. That's a life sentence, ladies and gentlemen. Now, he may be the first RoboCop with the, you know, Elon Musk brain chip. I would guess so. You can see that coming. But, you know what's happening out there, it's horrible. No matter who gets shot, to be quite honest with you. That's why we say bring the guillotine. It's, you know, it's clean, it's effective. Boogaloo July 4th. And look, the libtards have already beat you to it for the most part. Right? They've already taken over Seattle. What are you guys doing? And the problem with conservatives is that we're so spread out. And libtards are all in the big cities. So it's easy for them to mobilize. You know, it's like Mordor, and all they got to do is beat the drums, and here come all the trolls. But, look, I got to get back to the Hangouts here. Who's calling on the Hangouts? All right, go to hangouts.google.com, add ron.johnson701@gmail.com to your contacts, and I will try and add you in. See if we got anybody out there that wants to ring in. I don't see a whole lot of green dots. You know, you guys are so, like, you know, timid or shy. You don't even want to call in. How are you going to, you know, stand up for your rights? How are you going to stand up and get this country back? Ladies and gentlemen, feel free to practice. Go toe-to-toe with Ron Johnson. You'll never be the same. So, who's, well, JJ, I don't know where you called, bro. That's the thing. And I'm not seeing anybody calling in. I don't even know if I see a JJ, you know, in the contacts here. So if you haven't sent me an invitation, I can't find you. You know what I mean? So let's see what else. Who do we got? Anybody send me an invite? Okay, I see JJ right now. In fact, I'm going to call you JJ. You hang on. Let me get a few others into the list. Oh, okay. JJ's calling. JJ, you are live on STFN. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Ron? I'm a paramedic and I live in Chicago. And I wanted to let the folks out on your channel know something sinister that's been going on, or at least I come across in my own field. A couple months ago, FEMA had issued a statement to paramedics saying that they needed help in certain parts of the country. For example, in Louisiana, they were going to deploy us to Louisiana and New York. They had enlisted paramedics from all over the country to go to New York. Well, when I was presented with the contract for FEMA, they had required that we sign an NDA. And in the NDA, we were told we couldn't talk about things that we were told as far as what to expect, our experiences. You couldn't talk to the media. You know, they wanted to keep everything hush-hush as far as what was going on with the virus. I'm going to tell you right now, there are a lot of diseases out there that cause, like MRSA, for example. An average of 70,000 to 100,000 people a year die of MRSA. MRSA is, you know, highly contagious. We're not shutting down the country because people are dying of MRSA. We're not being asked to sign NDAs with FEMA because of MRSA. Like you said, you have a background in biology, so you understand what I'm getting at. So I was very suspect that they would even entertain the idea that we're not allowed to talk about our experiences as paramedics, healthcare workers, when it involves a virus in particular. Another thing, coming out of my own city, there was a doctor at Northwestern Hospital that wanted to do you guys know what a DNR is, a do not resuscitate, Ron?
Absolutely, yeah, we've been hearing about that.
Yeah, they wanted to change our protocols. As a paramedic, usually if we find somebody unresponsive, we're to initiate an airway and aid in CPR. That is standard protocol. Also, another thing that they suspended was any aerosolized maneuvers. So usually if somebody's in respiratory distress, they'll have wheezing, and we're to give them something called albuterol and Atrovent. They suspended the use of those those are life-saving medications. For somebody who's in respiratory distress, they're going to need those medications. So, and especially with these COVID cases, a lot of these people they're in acute respiratory distress. And albuterol and Atrovent helps very much so with those things. And they suspended our protocol for the use of nebulized treatments. They suspended our protocols for intubations. And for those of you who don't know what an intubation is, if you stop breathing or if you need assistance in breathing, I can do what's called an endotracheal intubation in the field. And that is where I assist your breathing by placing a tube down into your airway. They suspended us from doing that. So they wrote up specialty protocols for this time for us to withhold those protocols. And they also have a stop, CPR in the field protocol. And that's where if we come in the field and we find somebody who is in cardiac arrest, we are to treat everybody as if they have COVID until proven otherwise. So if you're in cardiac arrest, obviously, I don't know, you're not conscious enough to tell me if you have COVID or not. They want us to not perform CPR, and they want to move into placing DNRs in place. And I've actually seen where hospitals were urging DNRs on patients just based on the fact that they could not even without any information, just possible. What if your respiratory distress was caused by something else?
Well, look, I just want to interject here. I mean, we've been seeing all sorts of red flags since the beginning, and the nursing homes are another big thing where, we've got the DNRs and we've got them sending infected people into nursing homes that don't have any cases. and there were lots of reports of that genre. We saw them issuing DNRs for people just going for regular types of routine surgeries. And so it just seems like this was a mass culling event, and they've tried to basically shade everything they could, or keep everything they could in the shade and the like. Look, JJ, I'm a little pressed for time. I want to get some other people on, but look, this is more testimony from people out there in the field.
Absolutely.
Nurses, paramedics, and the like, telling you the same thing, that basically, the eugenics program has been institutionalized in our healthcare facilities as well as, related services. And so, that's probably why, the hospitals are going to remain empty. I think people have gotten the idea. They've gotten the message here. So,
yeah.
And
I just...
Go ahead.
Just wanted to thank you, Ron, for letting me on. I just wanted to get it out there that before they needed the family's approval, and now they're pressing for it's a doctor's choice. No longer, even the patients, even when the patients say, I don't want a DNR.
Well, it's the death panels. I mean, it's essentially
Yes.
the death panels, and
Yes.
it's been it's been rendered down to the doctor's level. It's not even a panel. It's just an agent of the system. Now.
Right, and they're doing it. They want to do it on the spot, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
And they're telling us to withhold, and they're scaring us too. They're trying to incite us with, if you do this, life-saving procedure, you could die.
Well, and they threaten people's jobs and the like, and so
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
they're forcing people to remain silent. Now, look, I just want to say that if you're gonna call in to the show, please don't slurp on your fucking drink and type on the keyboard. Try to be a courteous caller. No offense there, JJ. Let's see who else wants to call in. I know things were ringing on the phone, and look, I think people really need to work on their negative vernacular out there as well, because it sounded pretty deep in the matrix out there. Who wants to call in, go toe-to-toe with Johnson? Anyone? Are we still live? Did they cut the feed? Maybe. Hit like and share out there. Do you want to call in, or do you just want to end the show? Justine, not sure what's going on out there. We'll get back into you. Anybody else? Who else was on deck? Let's try and find the chat here. Everything is basically messing up a little bit. We're live on the Screw Tube, trying to get people to call into the show, have your voice heard. Drenger tried ringing me. I don't know if he's going to pick up, or she. We never know with these pseudos out there. But I'm going to try and ring Drenger. This is the callback service. We're broadcasting live, ladies and gentlemen. And it seems like we've got Drenger online. Am I pronouncing that right, brother?
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want, Drenger. It doesn't really matter to me. How's your day going, man?
Well, look, it's 616 out there, so I'm a little, I guess I'm a little skeptical about what may or may not happen today. But otherwise, yeah, no complaints. What's going on out there?
Yeah, for sure. Well, to me, it looks like a total breakdown of society. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. I know a lot of people agree with us about this. The corporate world of yesteryear is kind of going away and is ushering in a lot of chaos, which I think people got to be able to take advantage of, in as much as they should be establishing their own communities that are separate from the global capital order. So I think this is a great opportunity for a lot of better people to sort of establish power bases.
Well, I think people have an opportunity here to make history. And, I think that's what people signed up for in 2016, and we didn't actually get that. And now it's pretty clear that if we want the job done, we're going to have to do it ourselves. But we got a lot of competing tribes, and, look, we got our work cut out for us. One battle will lead to another. But look, I think it'll be interesting. I think we do need to reboot this country. I think everybody can agree on that. They don't like the way the system is going, but we've got communists on one side and patriots on another, and the deep state in the middle. So good luck out there. And a virus is floating around too. So where are you from? What have you seen over the past couple months that's maybe strange and unusual?
So I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so we've seen a lot of like the autonomous zones that are going up. Obviously, the major city centers, the metropolitan areas, are full of Judeo influence and wacky leftist types. So we get the radical Antifa and not a lot of racial tension because it's a majority white area, but we're having the same exact thing play out right before our eyes. The funniest thing to me is that you can be within 5 miles of an autonomous zone and everything is going normally. We're kind of dealing with like low intensity, like asymmetric warfare right now.
How many autonomous zones do you know of right now, personally?
I know of 2, in Portland and in Seattle.
Okay.
So I know there's 2. I think it's happening in the Northeast as well, and in the South a little bit. But
well, we're hearing about,
obviously.
Yeah, we're hearing about quite a few, and they're getting shut. Some are getting shut down right away by the 5-0, but others are, basically taking hold. Now, I haven't heard too much about the Portland autonomous zone. What do you know about that? How big is it? How many people are there?
I don't think that it panned out as well as the Seattle Autonomous Zone, and the majority of the Antifa in Portland and all those crazy leftists decided to go up to Seattle and do their little anarchy lore. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the things that they're pushing are good for us because the police are in effect the enforcers of like the evil powers, right? Whatever you want to call it, the beast system.
Well, it looks like they're letting it happen, and the mayor of Seattle sent in like concrete slabs for roadblocks for these protesters to kind of like solidify the borders, So it seems
free weed,
and there was like the festival. It was like movies playing, everything was set up. I think it was highly pre-planned and endorsed, in fact, by the regime out there. But look, the idea is nice, and I saw that they, changed the name to CHOP, and they're like talking about the guillotine, so it looks just like an STFN broadcast. It looks like they've been listening to the show, and they beat us to the punch. That's what it looks like. And look, it's understandable because they're all centralized in the city anyways, and most conservatives are out there, dispersed or maybe like spread out, we should say, out in the countryside. And look, I think it's important to remember that we have, as Christians and patriots, we have a Judeo-Christian culture. And I don't think, there is a New Testament without the Old Testament. And Matthew 1, chapter 1, it's all about bridging the gap between, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I know it's easy to, single out particular groups. I mean, I've been doing this for many years. I've seen all the videos. And all I can say is from our research is that we've got good and evil in every country. And it's not just, the Russians or the Jews or, whoever. It's really like every country is fighting the same thing. And look, I think it's important to put that out there because it's really easy to focus on, one group of people and forget about the big picture. And I think if we're going to make it out there, we got to forget about the tribal stuff for the time being, and we really got to focus on the bigger enemy, the biggest enemy that we have right now, which is this organized criminal syndicate known as the New World Order and the like. And that's really the message that I think should be put out there. I think we can spend a lot of time on conservatives and liberals, and we can spend a lot of time on other different types of classifiers, but essentially the people that are spraying the skies, the people that are bringing the death towers, the people that are fluoridating the water, they're the enemy that we have to worry about first and foremost. After that, I think it'll be a different story. But we really have to focus on the biggest, enemy right now.
I agree with you that focusing efforts on the system itself should be the ultimate goal of everybody. Like all effective efforts should be aimed at the system. But I would disagree in as much as we are being forced into a racial conflict, whether we like that or not. Essentially, when you see Black Lives Matter doing their stuff, that is a Black Power movement, and that is not inclusive. So when we are being excluded, we cannot be inclusive in as much as if we want to survive in any way, right? So it's not as if it's as clear and cut as like, we can band together, because unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to see it, the racial conflict, whether it's manufactured or organic, it's here, it's knocking at our doorstep. And so I think it would be a little foolish to deny that there's a very, very serious racial undertone to a lot of what's going on,
Oh, absolutely. And I think, we're all seeing quite a lot of videos of that nature in our news feeds, whether it be on Facebook, on Twitter, and the like. And that's by design. I mean, they're trying to, add fuel on the fire. And really the blueprint of all of that was kind of like the Jussie Smollett case, right? They've been basically trying to drag everybody into a big race war. And look, I mean, you show people videos of a certain nature and you're going to get, a response. And I think, people right now are more than happy to respond to what's showing up in the news feeds. And look, I think there is a genuine problem with, the sentiment that Black people have towards white people. And I'm not saying that, there aren't racist people from every, clan and the like, but you can tell that, there's a lot of animosity there in the Black community, and, whiteys are, going out the door one way or another.
Exactly. I think the blueprint for all of this, what I'm seeing more than anything else, is South Africa. I think we're reaching definitely South African conditions, and the quote end of apartheid, as was proclaimed in the world, is kind of what is happening in America now. The only difference is that South Africa, the Boers were a super minority, so what was happening to them was a large majority of Africans actually was able to sort of easily overpower them after like a few years of conflict. But we're not a super minority in America. Yet. Exactly. Yet. And that's why I hope the breakdown of the society happens quicker and quicker, because I don't want my children to be living in the South African conditions. I don't want my children to be the Boers of America, so I hope it all falls down, because in the absence of the quote law and order, which is really Freemasonic, Kabbalic, screwery, that's going on. That's what the cops are. They're Freemason, foot soldiers. And so, in the absence of them, I think we can actually have the values and act like men and deal with the problems like men, right?
Well, look, I think that, there's a lot of things to be said about, the current trend in demographics. I think that we're kind of looking at a new Babylon kind of situation where everybody's speaking the same language, and we've got all sorts of different types of communities or seeds being mixed in the same field. And there's actually a reference to that in the Old Testament, saying do not mix different seeds in the same field,
and don't pull your ox with two different or don't pull your cart with two different types of cattle.
Right. I mean, originally all the nations were separate in the sense of demographics, and when we started basically turning everything into a melting pot, while it sounded really like ideal and fair and something to to strive for, essentially we were sowing the seeds of our own destruction, because deep down, I mean, everybody wants to be in their own tribe. And, even the cattle are like that. I'm not sure how many people have seen free range cattle, but, all the brown cattle and all the white cattle will usually sit separately. And it's just the natural way of the world. And I think whenever we kind of like go unnatural, then here comes, wickedness. And look, I really personally don't have any problems with any of the other communities out there, period. But I do understand their resentment towards white people. And I think, most white people can look at, history and say to themselves, yeah, I wish we could have done things a little differently. But look, none of us were around back then. Everybody was of a different mindset back then. Life was cheap back then. And the crimes that occurred, are unjustifiable by today's standards. And I don't think any of us would, go to the slave market and own slaves and whip slaves and things like that. But, all of that is really besides the point. I think that, today, things have become very difficult for Europeans, if you will, because of things that happened hundreds of years ago. And maybe it's it's our turn to suffer. But I'll tell you what, if whites ever do become the super minority, they're probably gonna go out like the natives. We're gonna have our own little reservation somewhere, and and nobody's ever gonna see us again. So look, I think people have a right to stand their ground to a certain extent. And look, I think that's going to get ugly. But I think eventually people are going to have to, strive for survival. But I think that's a different chapter. That's going to be a different chapter in human history. I think right now we all have a vested interest in getting past this current situation, which is, the New World Order, mass genocide, the eugenics programs. But yeah, as a white person, I mean, right now you can't feel too comfortable, especially in a big city. And maybe that's why they're all like acting crazy, like the Antifa, because that's the only way to survive in the ghetto, really, is to act crazier than the people, down the street. Because nobody wants to mess with the crazy one. You know what I mean? They want to mess with,
essentially.
Well,
what I'll say about the Antifa, I think they're a product. Obviously, I think people have said it before, but they're just a product of that liberal idea. The end result of thousands or hundreds of years of the Enlightenment doctrine ended up with children, adults. They're adults, but they're mentally children, and they're being supported by the state, which has become their mother. And like the state wanted this, and they created it through their like subsidized higher education colleges, and really they were just indoctrination centers, right? And they created this like large populace of people that were completely childlike and dependent on mommy state for all the gives, all the gives. What can you give me? And all that. And I think that's more the real ideology of Antifa or the majority of people, really. They're not Marxists, and really they're not really against the police. They just want to have a temper tantrum like an insolent woman and have the state give them what they want.
The
right?
Insolent woman. I think we just lost a few fans with that one. Thanks, brother. No, but seriously, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I think that the Antifa is probably a mix of a lot of different genres. I think it's probably a devolution from the anonymous movement to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's aspects, yeah.
I think there's probably some other demographics of, the spoiled suburban kid that's out there for social justice. I think, we got all sorts of people. But I think it's also become kind of like the trendy thing to be in the cities, kind of like the way grunge was in the 90s. Or techno, around 2001 and stuff like that.
It's purely aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah, it's become like, just the thing to be as a kid these days, or as a young person, if you will. And you might say that they're going through a phase. I think most of us, when we were in college, we were probably a little more liberal than we are today. And not saying that we were full-blown, libtards, but I think most of us were more liberal, more the tree hugger kind of person, back in the day. And that's where they're at in a different way,
I would say that's because the idea, like you mentioned, a couple minutes ago, the idea of the multicultural melting pot, the idea of liberalism, it's been packaged and sold to us as if these are nice things, as if these are the way to achieve some sort of like utopic society. when in reality, the exact opposite is happening. It's double speak, right? They tell you, slavery is freedom. They tell you, multiculturalism will lead to a healthy, happy society, but really what it does is bring a whole bunch of interest groups with a bunch of disparate biological imperatives into the same area, which causes conflict and instability. So it's, on the surface, it sounds like a nice thing, but in reality, you're putting a whole bunch of people into a situation that is not best for them. They're not suited to be operating under the same premise as another group because they're different types of people, right? And so it's sold on the surface, and when you're younger, you might hear those things and be like, yeah, that sounds great, that's a nice thing. And then as time progresses, and I don't know, you have to hammer a couple of nails into something, and you hit your thumb. In the same way, you learn that not everything is as it seems. There are consequences to different actions, thought processes, and all that stuff. So on the surface, yeah, it sounds great, and then in actual reality, it's like, oh, this is a hellscape. And
well, how many people
it?
out there have played like SimCity or Sims or something like that, and basically they've turned society into a game like that, and they're just pushing buttons on a keyboard somewhere and delivering content through the television and phones, and they're fully manipulating society into whatever kind of frenzy they want, essentially. But right now, the race card is an easy one to play, and look, I think all of this is engineered, and we're all being triggered one way or the other, and this virus isn't helping. I'm not sure how many people feel like they're less tolerant or less patient now than they were like a few months ago, but I essentially feel that that's one of the reasons for this virus essentially was to make people more trigger happy.
A stressor. It was a stressor to input into the system because things weren't happening quickly enough. But what I'll say is what I think is actually going on. So there's been a whole bunch of different changes in power dynamics, right? So the 19th century industrialists were replaced by the 20th century, like the new industrial revolution kind of replaced them, and they used the 60s, 70s to create social upheaval so that they could create a new social narrative that was more in line with their own goals and their own like projection of the future. And what happened in the recent years, in the 2000s, after 1999, was the technological revolution. So you have all these startups becoming the dominant like power moguls of the current global economy. So you got like your Jeff Bezos, you got your Bill Gates, you got all these people that have become like newly like the quasi-aristocracy. And so what they're doing essentially is what I believe is what they're doing is creating massive social upheaval in order to install a new narrative into the system, in the same way you'd install a new hard drive. And this is seen every single time there's like a large power change. This has happened countless times whenever there's a regime change. And what I think, though, that's a positive thing for us to realize is that they are not mature in their power, meaning I believe they're overstepping their bounds, and they didn't have the same power acumen that say the industrialists of the Industrial Revolution has had. I think that their wealth and their status in society was so quick that they're making such such serious mistakes that it's going to cause their downfall. That's at least my personal opinion, and you can see the signs kind of written in the clouds right now.
Well, look, I think we're all in for a bumpy ride, and you better buckle up and get ready for this next winter, because undoubtedly a second wave will be coming, the vaccines will be coming, the goon squads will be coming, and in between now and then it'll be the civil war or the race riots and the like. Look, I want to thank you for calling in. I'm going to see if anybody else wants to get on the show. We're going to wrap this up here pretty soon, but look, I'm glad that people are out there and talking about the issues versus just kind of like playing video games and watching movies and the like. And that's where they want you, is basically watching the bread and circus and not focusing on the real issues, the big picture and the like. So thanks again to Drenger out there for calling in. You can definitely feel that West Coast vibe. You know what I'm saying? In any case, you know, that's the world we live in. Essentially, you can feel the vibes. Who else wants to call in? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone want to call in? Bueller. Let's see. Who wants to call in? Anybody? Anybody got the cojones? Go ahead, ring me right now on hangouts.google.com, and we'll take one last caller if we can. Anyone? Anyone out there? I mean, you sent in an invite. You're out there right now, and you're saying to yourself, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm too afraid. How are you going to show up to the Boogaloo if you can't even call into the show? Anyone? I'm going to start calling people randomly. Fuck it. Huh? Who wants to call? Who shall I pick? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a truther by the toe. And if it hollas, let it go. Oh, you came in yesterday, Marco, and you blasphemed on my show, so I'll have to catch you next time. Let's see, what else can we do? No offense, though. Everybody's, you know, on the OMG. Oh, I see a green light next to news and reviews. See what happens when I ring this guy. Think he's gonna answer. Anyone? Well, at least we tried. Who's this? Oh, for fuck's sakes, dude. Let's see. Anybody else that hasn't called in before? Let's see. News and reviews. He's just going to work, so maybe he'll catch us next time. I'd like to hear if anybody's got a disaster story. Have you gone through anything weird over the course of the epidemic? You know, there was a time in February, went to the grocery store, and it sounded like everybody had like whooping cough, and it was really like straight out of a science fiction film. You know, it was kind of like Birds, except everybody was coughing. And you know, I understand there's a lot of people out there that feel like, you know, there's nothing going on, and you know, people are just making this stuff up. But I saw some stuff this winter that really just made me think like, yeah, this shit's real. So I'm not sure if anybody else has had that experience. What I do know is that when I talk to people about it in person, you know, they can be coughing right now in the middle of June, and they're like, oh no, nothing happened, no, you know, never felt better. You know, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. This is hyper normalization, and that's what people do. You know, when they're in the shit, they're just like, no, it's fine. And that's kind of like the best way to go about things. But every once in a while, you got to come back to reality and go, no, dude, I saw some crazy shit, and I don't think it's getting any better out there. That's my point of view right now. And look, you know, my intuition has been pretty good thus far. I would say that we're in for some HR 6666 come this winter, and mandatory vaccines. Okay, well, it looks like news and reviews is going to be on deck here. I'm going to ring you, bro. See what happens. And maybe not. Oh, we got contact. News and reviews. You're live on STFN. What's going on? Well, it looks like the call is picked up, but we're still having technical difficulties. We'll try back. Try and ring, bro. I think you hit the little camera icon. Looks like that. Might look a little different if you're using the app. We're on the PC. Marty Lauderdale is on deck. I'm going to try Marty. I don't know if Marty is still there. You never know what you get these days. It's kind of like Tumblr in a way. You know? Let's see. Anybody? That's the worst, ringing sound ever. So I'm going to let either Marty or News and Reviews just, figure out how to initiate the call on their end. But essentially you just kind of hit the little video icon and then just turn off the camera as it's ringing. But, we're not featuring people's faces on air. It's like the faceless society. Not receiving a call, bro. Well, look, just try calling me right now. That's all I can say. Hit the little camera button. Something. And, maybe you guys are calling. I'm just not seeing it because usually it kind of shows up here. Real weird. Anyone? Just try calling. Ah, I got one. I got a customer here. We got News and Reviews live on STFN. What's going on, bro? Yeah, I think the microphone is muted here. I think we got microphone issues. So we're going to have to try and authorize the microphone for Google. Anybody else want to, ring me here? How about this guy? Jesus Kingdom Power. Let's see if we can get this one to work. Anyone out there? Hello, bitches. It's Ron Johnson calling. Pick up the phone. The Matrix is calling. Pick up the phone, bitches. What's wrong with people these days? Look, I've never used Google Hangouts before, but it's really not that difficult. Although it can be. So let's see. Third time's a charm with News and Reviews. What's going on, brother? And still, we cannot hear you. The microphone is not working. So, anybody out there? He's left the call. Well, we're trying, and this is why we're kind of doing this right now. It looks a little ghetto, but I think hopefully we'll get everybody trained in eventually. Anyone else? I know you're trying, and there's not much else I can do. This isn't Google customer service, technical support here. So folks are on your own there for figuring out the microphone. Usually you have to authorize. You might have to do that in the settings of the app or something. Authorize microphone. And Marco wants to come on, but... Oh, was that Are You Serious? Fuck, dude. I would have taken your call. I'm calling you back. Are you there? Are you serious?
Oh, was that Are You Serious?
Well, I can hear myself now. But that call didn't go through as anticipated. Seemed like we were almost there. Not sure what to say. But try calling us back. Anybody, for the most part. Give us a call back. Let us know what you're seeing, what you're doing. Last chance, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna wrap this shit up. But look, we got a couple calls that made it through, and I'm not sure if anybody else really wants to give it a chance, but feel free to try to do so right now. Let's see if we got any new invites. Anybody out there from the studio audience? And maybe not. Let's see. No new people, just the ones that have already sent a notification. Are you serious? Here we go. Are you serious? Are you there? And all of a sudden, we just can't hear you, brother.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me.
I can
Can
hear
you
you
hear me
now.
now?
I can hear you now. Sounds like a Verizon commercial. Here we are. So
I think that's why you're having problems yesterday was that whole, phone blackout could have been.
well, I don't know, man. That was kind of spooky. I think a lot of people were talking about that. Did your service was your service affected out there?
I don't know. I don't talk on the phone that much, so I just usually go on the internet, watch some videos, or I'm outside working.
Yeah. Well, here we are once again.
So how's it going today?
Well, it's another day in the Matrix, to be quite honest. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sucks.
Well, it is what it is. I mean,
it
every
is what it is. You are
every
correct.
minute of the day is its own little battle, if you will. So
I get really frustrated watching all these brainwashed people just doing insane stuff. I mean, they're just acting nutty, and they don't see it. They think it's normal behavior to burn down buildings or to loot or to beat people up. And to me, it's very obvious they're being manipulated, but for some reason, these people can't see it.
well,
And I
everybody's
find
on
that
the everybody's on the COVID right now.
Yeah.
And it's worse in the cities. And not that long ago, we were talking about psychotronic weapons. And there's been a lot of research since the 1950s and 60s, and they learned how to broadcast emotions through electromagnetic waves. You've probably seen stuff like
Oh yeah,
the
absolutely.
Lily wave and stuff like that. So they're amping everybody up, with the videos, with the psychotronic weapons, with the rabies aspect of this virus. And so it's just a giant powder keg waiting to go off.
And it's going to go off here, I'm guessing, by November or
Well,
shortly after the election.
why
I mean,
not?
it's going to get bad. I mean, I don't think people realize how bad it's going to get. It's a biblical event that's taking place now, and it's just going to keep ramping up.
It's going to look like the zombie apocalypse, to say the least. And
It's going to be worse than a Black Friday. A Black Friday sales event where people are beating each other up to get a whatever they're looking for.
it's like a fire sale. Everything's got to go.
Everything's got to go.
And look, I think people that have been prepping for a while, they feel pretty vindicated right now.
Oh, absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
there's a lot of truthers that are saying, I told you so, but I told you so doesn't make it any better. I could be saying that all day long. We called this thing, months, ahead of everybody else, made everybody look bad. And I could be like, I told you so, but that doesn't put the genie back in the bottle.
No, it doesn't.
And so we really need to work towards solutions versus, anything else. But look, I mean, I think a purge is overdue. I think a revolution is overdue. Will it go as we want it to go? Probably not.
I don't think it can be stopped what's coming. I mean, it was written thousands of years ago. It's in the Bible. We know what's coming. We just need to learn to open our hearts to God to get answers. That's it. Because if you open your heart and listen, God will tell you what to do through intuition. He will say, okay, it's time to stock up on food, or it's time to do this. It's time to bug out. It's time to do this. It's time to do that. God will direct you if you have faith.
Absolutely.
If you listen.
Absolutely. Now, is it the end right now? Is it, the apocalypse? I think, a lot of people are talking about that, but I also think that, the apocalypse is going to look like the movie Independence Day in a sense. I think this is a manufactured kind of like, attempt, and it looks like somebody else is trying to call in, but
I see the apocalypse, the definition as the lifting of the veil, which is what's already happened. We're in the middle of the apocalypse right now. The veil's being lifted to see who's pulling the strings, to see how brainwashed people are. So we're in the apocalypse. I mean, that's how I see it, the lifting of the veil.
Well, it's
I don't
starting to
see
look
the-
more and more like the Book of Revelation. So I think
Absolutely.
we're on our way there. We might be in the home stretch. And look, nobody knows the date and the time.
No one.
But
Well, God knows.
absolutely. Right? I mean, like, nobody on earth.
No
And-
mortal man knows. his
And
date.
I think that from reading the Book of Revelation, it kind of looks like the return is going to be epic, like Independence Day, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And so, look, people need to just stay on course and not worry, because
Absolutely.
it tells you that over and over again, in the Gospels. Why are ye afraid?
You need to live one day at a time and put your faith and trust in Jesus, the Father in the heaven. You got to trust him 100%. You can't have partial trust. You can't be a so-called Christian on a Sunday but sin the other 6 days of the week. You need to live your life the best you can and not worry about tomorrow. Live each one day at a time, because if you worry about tomorrow, you're going to stress yourself out. You're going to start worrying. The fear is going to take hold, when you just need to have faith that God will provide.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, the best thing to do is to kind of look at things in terms of positive or negative, and just avoid the negative. Now, that's easier said than done, but negative emotions lead you towards negative acts, and
It's yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I struggle with it all the time. I mean, I try to do it. I try to be a better man. I try to be a better person. Every day I try. It's a struggle. I backslide some days. Some days I do great.
Well,
But
every
it is a struggle.
every day's a new opportunity. It's like Groundhog's Day, and I think that's kind of like the point of us, falling asleep at night and then waking up again in the next morning. It's kind of like a resurrection in a sense, and it's a reminder of kind of like the bigger picture, but. Every day is a new opportunity, and look, none of us are perfect, and none of us are going to be 100% all the time, but the
absolutely.
the idea is what side are you on, and who are you fighting for?
Well, I think another big problem is we've had this whole Aleister Crowley mentality of do what thou will pushed on people's minds through movies and everything else. When it boils down to what are you going to act like? Are you going to act like an animal and give in to your baser instincts, or are you going to try to rise above it and be a better person to prepare yourself for what's to come? And the way I see it is, why would God allow anybody into his home if he doesn't get to know you first? Why would he give you the keys to the kingdom if he doesn't know you? So you need to be subjected to all this craziness before you're allowed to enter. So it's a struggle that we all must go through. We all have to face this. Everyone. There's no rapture coming, at least in my opinion, where you're going to get out of this unscathed.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty clear as far as most of us are going to be going through some dark times, and look, that's just the way the world is, and it's part of it's part of the program. Now, it could be a perfect world, but that would mean that free will really isn't an issue.
Well, the way I get really tired of people talking, Christians saying, well, you should fear God. Well, I'm not doing anything out of fear of God. I'm doing out of love for God. I want to follow his rules because I love God, not that I'm fearful of God. The only thing I fear about God is being cut off from God. That's what I fear.
Well, and
not
that's
having
hell,
God in my
and
life.
that's essentially hell. And look, I think that people can justify their actions, however they'd like to, and I think it's important to do good for good. It's for the sake of good itself. And I think if people are just doing good for the reward, that kind of cheapens the act a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if you do it out of love or fear, I think it's important that you do the right thing for the right reasons out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And look, I think that the most awake people that you'll find out there are Christians, people of faith, and there's a reason for that, because they can see the difference between good and evil quite plainly. And once you wake up to that, everything else kind of just falls into place. And that's where I think that's part of the struggle is getting people there. But really, the education that everybody needs is right in the Bible, and it's on audio. You can find it on YouTube. We've left a link in the video description. But know it better than your favorite song. Know it better than MTV. Know it better than just about anything else. I mean, if you're going to spend all day on Facebook, but not 1 minute in the Bible, what does that say about you?
It says that you're attached to this world. You would rather live in this world. You're attached to this world, and you're embracing things that are more than likely will lead you down a dark path. Because there's two animals in us all. It's one that's full of anger, hate, and rage, jealousy. The other one's full of love, compassion, empathy, justice, truth. Which animal are you going to feed? Are you going to feed the better of the two, or are you going to give in and take the easy out through being negative? Well, because it's hard to be positive in this world. It really is. It's not that easy, especially when you're surrounded by negativity.
Well, especially today when there's so much of it, and it's almost become fashionable out there. So look, people really have to take care of themselves first and foremost in terms of getting it right. It's kind of like being on the plane and the oxygen masks come down, and you got to get you got to put your mask on first. You got to get the
you got to get your house in order before you can help anybody else get there.
Right. I mean, I think we all want to go out there and change the world, and we just got to make sure that we're on the same page. And
absolutely,
it's right there in the Bible, and that's all anybody can really say. And most of us can remember as children, somebody coming into our lives and reading the Gospels to us and telling us that Jesus loves you. And I think it's important that we continue to evangelize and pay it forward. And the best way to do that is to know what you're talking about out there. So know your Bible, and then start reaching out, especially to young people. And look, the best way to become an effective role model is having some class or some style with your evangelism. And if it's just like persistent, shoving it down people's throats and being super intrusive, it's not as effective as people kind of like looking up to you and admiring you and saying, hey, I want to be like that guy. What makes that guy tick? Oh, he's a Christian. Wow. Well, maybe I should find out more. And I think
being a positive role model is very important.
Absolutely.
But I think a big part of why Christianity has taken a turn and people are so against it is all these TV preachers that are doing this hocus pocus stuff, and they're giving Christians a bad name.
It's sabotage. Yeah, they've infiltrated, and it's sabotage. And it's just like the pedo, priests and just about every church out there. They infiltrate and they sabotage. And go ahead.
Are you familiar with the Sabatine Francus?
Oh yeah, 1666.
Yeah, exactly. Redemption through sin.
You couldn't even make that up. And
they've infiltrated every organization because their belief is redemption through sin. So the bigger the sin, the closer you get to God, which is just warped. It's just
well, look, really this has been going on for thousands of years, and the methodologies are very refined, and you have to remember that every army uses camouflage, and so look, things aren't always going to be as straightforward as you might think. Now, look, we're gonna have to leave it there. Are you serious? I appreciate you calling in. I'll have you come back.
I didn't want to call. I was going to call in earlier, but I was thinking, man, I talked yesterday.
Exactly.
People don't want to hear,
Well, I'm glad that we got a couple newbies in, and we're kind of like breaking the ice, if you will, and trying to have everybody work this out. It's not as easy as it looks, but it is what it is. We'll leave it there for this broadcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and look. Try to figure out this Google Hangouts. if you will. It's not that overly difficult, but you know, if you want to call in, we'll do this a couple times. We want to, you know, see if it works, if it gets people interested. Now tomorrow we've got Adam Kokesh on the show, or today, depending in your time zone. It's kind of a worldwide broadcast, but on the 17th we've got Kokesh scheduled, and we should be talking about this from the libertarian point of view. So it should be pretty interesting. He's always a real wild guest, and it's a good debate. So, you know, we'll look forward to that. Hard to say when that show will come out, because we'll probably pre-record to avoid any types of glitches in the matrix. We've had a lot of broadcasters dump midstream, so we'll just, you know, pre-record and play that out. And we'll probably come back Friday with another live show where people can call in and the like. So look, appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll leave it there for this broadcast. Be sure to like and share. Support our community at patreon.com/STF News. Probably got that link in the description. Buy the Video Guy beer and help this operation keep growing. And look, we'll be back next time. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, you are